Hey, this is Al McGee at YETicket.com. I'm here to talk to a director and a writer, and her name is Jessica, and we're going to talk about her new short film called Rise. I really found that to be very, very emotionally charged for me because I not that I've seen this story before, but I heard about it, and I've been around boxers here in the United States for a long time. But this was taken, this film was shot in Zimbabwe, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why did you choose that location?
Um, well, firstly, thank you for having me, and I'm so glad that you liked the film. Um, so we shot in Zimbabwe because I spent a lot of my childhood in Zimbabwe. My parents lived there. My mum's a nursery school teacher in Victoria Falls. She was a nursery school teacher in Wange, and then they moved to Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, and I spent a lot of time there growing up. And the story's inspired by a true story of my close friend, Tobias Mafuti. He runs a boxing gym and orphanage for street kids in our community, and I train at his gym. And our membership fees go towards supporting the kids. And so I've seen the work that he's doing. And one evening we were chatting about his life, and he has the most incredible life story. And I was so inspired and moved by it. And I thought, well, I really wanted to share the story with the world, and Tobias trusted me to do that. And there was nowhere else in the world we could shoot it other than the place that inspired it with the community that inspired it. So that's why we
Well,
shot in Zim.
yeah, I'm glad to see that. And I'm glad to see the community. I'm glad to see that part of the world, that environment. But I was really shocked, amazed. This little young kid, his name is Rise, and he was living in garbage, and he was
Yeah.
living in an environment that's for a young kid like that. Well, here, I'm an American. Uh, we might have some kids like that, but I haven't seen them. But it was just so impactful for me to see that. What gave you that idea to shoot it like that, or at that particular scene to find him like that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's based on reality. In and I think I was actually speaking to a Ghanaian filmmaker last week, and after watching the film, he said those kids living on the trash, on the rubbish dump, that happens in Ghana too. And it seems to be an issue across the continent. But there are people living on dump sites basically, and depending on the size of the town, there are different to different degrees. But there are makeshift houses on dump sites, and because I people scavenge through the trash for food and for resources to build a home or little things to sell. Children end up on dump sites, especially in our community, because unfortunately there's some charity work that is intentioned for good reasons, but they basically pay you to collect plastic to stop polluting. So kids go around collecting plastic to get paid by these charities. But the problem is a lot of the plastic's on dump sites. So these kids are spending a lot of time on the dump sites, and street kids and homeless kids often find a home there.
Yeah, in fact, I have seen that in other parts of Asia and places like that too, where the kids are in the dump sites, scavenging or collecting or whatever they're doing there. Now, is boxing big there?
Um, I think the great thing about boxing is it's a really global sport, and it really translates in every culture. And I think it it very much connects with like low income house. Like traditionally, boxing stories are it's like a working class sport. It's you just need muscles and grit and resilience and to be able to fight your way through things. I think that's why boxing stories cut through often. And yeah, boxing's big there. I mean, I'm not sure if I'd say it's as big as in the United States, but it's major, and it's a really accessible sport, which I think is why it pops up everywhere in all different communities, because you don't need facilities and you don't need a lot of money in order to be able to participate.
Yeah, I've known boxers for many, many years, and I'll tell you one thing that they do. They're very disciplined, and they spend many hours in the gym every day, even when they don't have a schedule for a boxing match. They still in that gym every day, tuning their body up and working with their trainer to fix a hook, whatever, a jab, work on their feet. And I see that in this film, this young kid, he's very dedicated to be a good boxer. But why is he so dedicated?
Um, so he's dedicated because he wants to find belonging. He wants to find a home, and he sees he sees his coach training in the bush near the dump site each day. For those that haven't seen the film, the coach character's training in the bush, and this little street kid notices him training and then starts pestering him to train him. And I think for the boy, for Rise, a lot of it outwardly he wants to be a boxer and he wants to be a big strong man, as a lot of 8-year-old boys do. They just like the Hulk, and they like big masculine muscly figures to try and idolize. But I think in underneath all of that in the film, Rise really wants belonging, and he wants someone to take care of him, and he sees this coach figure as an opportunity for that.
Yeah, also, I was very surprised that the coach kind of understood Rise because I feel that the coach maybe had a life like that himself before he discovered what he can do. Is that part of his story also, the coach, the boxing coach?
Yeah, yeah, that's really perceptive. I'm really happy you picked up on that. Yeah, because like I mentioned earlier, the story is inspired by my friend Tobias, and Tobias directly inspired the coach character, this figure in the community who takes in all these ragtag kids and takes care of them. But Rise is also inspired by Tobias, the child, and Tobias grew up on the streets in Victoria Falls, and he actually didn't have a mentor. And so it's like, imagine the movie if Rise hadn't met Coach. He ended up going into a life of crime and had a really, really tough upbringing. And then a bit later down the road, he decided he was going to use his boxing as a way to help kids like him. But yeah, both characters are actually inspired by Tobias. And you know, the coat in the film, Rise is wearing a coat, which makes a really nice silhouette, a big man's army coat. That's actually inspired by a photo I found of Tobias when he was a child. When he left home, he took his father's old army jacket, and he would sleep on the streets because it gets cold at night in Zimbabwe. So he would sleep up a tree and wrap himself up in this massive coat. And I thought, of course, we have to use that in the film. Rice has to be wearing that coat.
Hmm.
So that's so yeah, you're right. Both were inspired by Tobias.
Oh, wow. That's really remarkable. Now, Jessica, let's talk about you somewhat. How did you get started in shooting films? How did you get started?
I got started. I had a bit of a meandering career. I have two law degrees. I thought I wanted to be a human rights lawyer, um, but I took a sharp left turn out of law school and decided I wanted to make movies and tell stories. And so I started writing films, and I got in. I spent quite a few years screenwriting, and then I decided that I wanted to carry one of my stories all the way through to completion. When you're a writer, there's a lot that's not within your control. And I wanted to see my stuff get made. And so I got really interested in directing. And I was actually at an inflection point in my career where I was in a bit of a creative rut. I wasn't sure what stories I wanted to tell. And it seemed like the same stories were kind of being recirculated in the psyche. And so I went home to Zimbabwe to see my mum and spent some time with her just for a reset. And that was actually when I got talking to Tobias. And then I was like, well, this is the kind of movie I want to watch. A kind of movie about your life. It's so inspiring and so it moves me deeply and it feels deeply personal and the impact that the story could have as well. I mean, I spent 3 years making this film. It was a massive labor of love. But because of the film's visibility, Tobias has doubled his orphanage in size. He can take care of 16 more children as a direct result of the film. There's just so much impact you can have through storytelling and through directing when you pick the right stories and you use the right people. That's really important for authenticity and to be able to make sure that the benefits that come from telling a story and people reacting positively go back to the community where the story came from. I'm a really big believer in that, and I'm really proud that we've done that with this film.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you explained to me, well, why did you get started? And you were originally, well, you were still a lawyer, but you wanted to be in civil rights and things like that. And then you switched to the movies, being a filmmaker. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right, as a writer, once you get started on the project, you find that it's more to it than just writing. And what did you find when you started shooting films? How much, well, was involved in movie making?
Yeah, there's a lot. A lot goes into it. And I think screenwriting was a good entry point for me because it's a low barrier to entry. I didn't grow up in an environment where I was aware of the entertainment business or the movie business. I didn't know that there were jobs called screenwriter or producer or director. I wasn't exposed to that. So screenwriting was a great entry point because you just need a laptop and a brain and a good idea, and you can learn loads from the internet and videos. And if you write a good script, in the US, people will read it. And if you can knock it out the park on the writing, and that's what kind of got me in the door. And I'm really happy I took that route because you don't need to know people, and it's much more accessible. But then once I got a little bit of experience in the business, I was like, oh, I want to tell my stories with my two hands. I've got a vision for this, and I want to bring it all the way. So yeah, like you said, as you say, a lot goes into it. In actually bringing the script to the screen. And especially in Zimbabwe, there are lots of particularly challenging elements to making films out there where there's not a lot of infrastructure for filmmaking. But it was the most rewarding experience of my life and really, really fun.
Yeah, I could imagine many of the challenges there in Zimbabwe trying to shoot a film. But, the more you shoot, the much better it should be getting, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, exactly. And you mean in Zimbabwe as a whole? Absolutely. The more productions that go there, and the more films that go there, the more infrastructure there is. And even through Rise, I think we've seen. I'm trying to use Rise to open the doors to have conversations with people in the US and in the UK about making films out there and not just shooting everything in South Africa or shooting it in Joshua Tree because it's a desert, but actually going to Zimbabwe and telling stories there. And Zimbabwe is really open to that. And my producer, Joe Njagu, has been consulting with the Zimbabwean government about creating all sorts of tax incentives to encourage more productions to go there. So I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see Zimbabwe's film industry open up. And I'm really excited for that because there's such a deep, rich pool of talent and stories there and filmmakers and creative people making stuff. And it just hasn't been tapped into yet. So it's so exciting for the very clever people that go and open those doors and have a look at what's in there. They're going to hit a gold mine.
Yeah, and I love to see your name there. This happens because of Jessica. Well, Jessica, I want to thank you very much for taking time with me, Al McGee, here at yeticket.com. And much more success to you. And I would encourage people to see this short Rise. Man, wait till you see it. You're going to be surprised of the story and also your great work. Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks.
good day.
Bye.